Personnel selected, Dave, toy restoration expert and YouTuber. Channel codename toy-polloi.
Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi and a special video recorded for Cobra Convergence 8, which runs for the entire month of July 2024. If you want to find out more about Cobra Convergence, then follow the link in the description. But basically, it's everything to do with G.I.Joe and Cobra, and because of that, I'm going to be fixing up these two vintage G.I.Joe figures. Now, I thought it would be fun to do a restoration on a vintage G.I.Joe figure, so I went out hunting to see if I could find two of the worst figures ever, and I think I found two perfect figures in Tomax and Xamot here. I picked these up on eBay, and as you can see, they have been really well played with. They're incredibly loose and floppy, and they are missing most of their paint, and that's what we're going to be restoring today. So let's get on with the project. So here are the two figures, and as I say, I picked these up off eBay fairly recently because I thought they would be a fun challenge. You can see that they have most of the paint missing. Both figures look pretty much the same. Everything has been worn off them. Both are missing the little Cobra symbols. Their heads are sort of really rough and ready. They've got lots of hair missing. All the silver paint is missing. They just generally look in a sorry state. But what they do have going for them is that neither of the thumbs are broken, so those are pretty good. The pelvis isn't broken on either of them, and I think with a little bit of work these can be made to look like really nice figures. So that is the challenge that I'm going to take on today. The first thing we need to do though is give them a good clean. As I bought these from eBay, I don't know what's happened to them in the past. They are feeling a bit dirty and a bit filthy, so we'll give them a clean with some hot soapy water and a toothbrush. I'm not going to take them apart at this stage, so I won't be submerging them. I will be using the toothbrush just to bring water to them to clean them up. Once they're clean, we can then start taking them apart and seeing about fixing all of the paint and making them stand up again, because yeah, they are particularly floppy figures, but they can be saved. So let's get on with the cleaning. After a good clean, these guys are already feeling a lot better, and I would say starting to look a lot better, but as you can see, they do look pretty rough. The next thing to do is just to take them apart, and I've shown this many times before. They've got a screw on the back, which you undo that, and you can get to all of the main pieces inside, and then there's a screw on the leg just to take the top parts of the leg apart. So I'm going to get them into their sort of component pieces, and then we can start dealing with the paint. And there we go, they are now both in pieces. And yes, before anyone does ask and comment, I did stab myself in the finger with a screwdriver, so I've now had to put a plaster on that finger. Sometimes accidents happen when you're fixing toys. It just can't be helped. And I've been fixing toys for many years, and I have hurt myself many times over those years. So it's just one of those things, but it's not going to stop me fixing these guys. So what we need to do now is start painting them. And I'm going to start with the silver, because it looks like to me that the silver was put on first. So you've got the silver, then we have this sort of reddy burgundy, and then on top of that the final one will be the black, which you can just see there on the knife. So the first thing to do is to put the silver on. Now with the silver you could just go ahead and paint that with some Humble or some G.I.Joe silver, but I've found over the years that the best option is actually to use some paint pens. You can buy these Sharpie paint pens. These are particularly good. I've used these a lot on vintage Masters of the Universe Ram Man toys. They work exceptionally well. And then while I was in Japan I picked up this which is basically the same thing. It's another silver paint pen, but it has a fine nib to it, so it's very useful for doing small parts. So I'm going to be using those to sort out the silver on all of these. It feels like it's a sort of the wrong thing to do, but it actually works particularly well. And when I've finished painting all of these, I'm going to spray them with a Mr. Hobby semi-gloss clear coat, which will help keep the paint in place, because sometimes with these silver sharpies you can just sort of rub them off with your finger afterwards. So a clear coat on top of everything will help hold it in place, but it gives you a really nice finish. So let's get started on this. There is an awful lot of areas to paint on this which are silver, and all of them are very worn. So you can see here these are his calves. Most of the silver has been worn away from the back of this and pretty much everywhere, so we're going to do an awful lot of touching up of the silver. It's going to be the main part of this job, and there are some fairly awkward pieces to do as well, which is like the pelvis. There's a thin strip of silver that goes around the back of this, but it's then over painted with the burgundy colour. So yeah, a lot to do, but it will be worth doing, and it will make a massive difference to how these figures look.
Tomax.
It's only when you start a project like this that you realise that there are so many areas that are painted on these figures, and with Tomax and Xamot there's an awful lot that is silver painted, so it's taken me quite a while to get all of these pieces covered, but you can see it is really covered quite nicely. So that's one of the shoulder pieces there that was pretty worn. It really had very little paint left on it, so now that's not looking too bad at all. And if I show you one of the shoes or the boots, you can see that is also looking really nice and silver. Now with these paint pens, it's best to try not to touch them too much. So from now on I'm going to be handling them as little as possible, and when I do handle them I'm going to be using things like tweezers and stuff, so I don't really touch the paint areas that much. The next colour I want to put on these is the black. There's only a few areas of black. Both of the gloves need to be painted black. There's a little bit on the boot, you can see there's a knife there, and likewise there is a gun on one of the hips, so I've got to paint those pieces black. Once that's done, we'll then worry about the burgundy colour, and for the black I'm going to be using this G.I.Joe model colour, which is 70.950 black. This is a matte finish black, so it's going to look sort of different to the original, but then at the end, as I say, we are going to cover these in a semi-gloss Mr. Hobby spray, which will bring it back to the original look. So let's get all of these black parts painted, and then we'll move on to trying to mix some paint that will match that burgundy, which could be a little bit tricky, but we'll worry about that once we get to it. So let's get the black paint sorted. Now for the burgundy colour, I've been going through the paints that I have, and I think I found a fairly good match, which is this model colour, which is called Violet Red, which is 70.812, and if you mix that with a little bit of the game colour Bloody Red, which is 72.010, I can get a burgundy colour that's a pretty close match. So that's what I'm going to be doing, mixing those two colours together and then painting all of these areas. Again, there are a lot of areas with this burgundy on, so it's going to take quite a while, and it may take a couple of coats, especially on areas like this where it's worn away and you can see the dark blue of the underlying plastic underneath it. It might take a couple of coats to cover that. So it's another long process, but I think we are getting there. It's starting to look really nice. You can see the hands look a whole lot better now they're painted black, and actually if I show you this arm where we've got the silver at the top and the black at the bottom, that is really looking very nice. So yeah, let's get this burgundy painted and then we'll see where we stand. Everything is actually covering really nicely. You can see here that I've got that sort of burgundy painted on, and that actually took 3 coats on this front piece just because it was so sort of dark blue behind. Other pieces I've done a couple of coats on, and I'm very happy with the end results. You can see that it's a matte finish, as I say, so by the time we put that top coat on, it will look like the original paint. So that colour is all done. Now we move on to the hair and the eyes, which is going to be quite awkward. The hair colour, I've actually mixed something already, which I think is a close mix, but we've also got to paint the eyes. So I'm going to be painting the hair just using a paintbrush, but for the eyes I'm going to be using one of my pin tools. So this is a pin stuck in an old paintbrush handle, and I'm going to use that to draw the eyes and the eyebrows on just very carefully. It's a little bit of a sort of a trial and error with that. I've actually got another Tomax to the side here, so I can sort of copy where the eyebrows should be. Even the eyebrows on that one aren't in amazing condition, but it gives me a good idea of where I'm supposed to be putting the paint. So I'm going to use that as my guide. And the paint that I've mixed up, I've used this, which is a colour called Violet. So this is 70.960 model colour Violet, and I've mixed into that some of this, which is a game colour called Beastly Brown, or Beastie Brown, 72.043, and that has given me a colour that's a pretty close match. You can see that there mixed in the middle. So that's what I'm going to be painting onto the hair. And as far as painting this on, it's just going to be sort of go slow and try and get the eyes as close as possible. If it goes wrong, I will remove the paint and I'll start again, but they are quite fine details to do. So yeah, I'll do the best I can. Those have actually turned out way better than I could have hoped. Doing the eyes is always a very tricky thing to do just because they're such sort of fine details, but I think I've managed to capture the sort of original look of those eyes and eyebrows pretty closely. So I'm very happy with those. I'm now going to let everything dry, and then tomorrow I'm going to take it to my garage and give it a clear coat with some Mr. Hobby semi-gloss spray, and that should sort of finish off the look of this figure. Just give it that sort of same paint finish that the original figures have, which is not quite gloss but it's not quite matte, so it's a sort of a mid-tone. So a semi-gloss should finish that off really well. So let's leave these overnight and then we'll do the final top coat tomorrow. It's now a couple of days later and all of the paint has had time to dry and everything is looking really nice. You can see here, if we take a look at the head there, the paint has now got that sort of sheen that the original paint would have had, and I'm very pleased with how these are looking. We're almost ready to actually put these two figures back together, but before we do that we need to sort out the loose limbs, because a lot of these figures have very loose limbs. So you can see here, this arm, if I rotate it like that, it won't stay in place because it is so loose. So we need to sort that out. We've got the same problems with the knees, and we also have a similar problem with the head. In fact, if I put the head together of this one, you can see how floppy it is. All of these things are very easy to fix, so we've got just a few little more processes to go through to get that sorted. So you can see that one is incredibly loose. So how do we do it? Well, the first two involve super glue, and that is the elbow joints and the head. So what I've got here is just a little bit of super glue and a bit of paper. So I'm going to put some super glue on this paper here. We'll deal with the head first because that takes the longest amount of time for the glue to set. I've got this little dotter here, which is just a metal tool with a little sort of pip on the end of it, and I'm going to pick up a tiny amount of that super glue, and then I'm going to dot it just here on the neck on the inside, just there. We just want one tiny little dot there at the back, and then we'll do the same on the front. So again, I'm going to get a little bit of super glue on my dotter, and I'm just going to dot a bit of super glue just there, actually a little bit more on that one, like that, and then you just leave it and let it set. And once that's set, it just adds a little bit of thickness to that area, so a little bit of friction, and when you put the head in, it will then stay in place. We are also going to use super glue to fix these loose arms. So you can see here on this one, it just rotates around too easily. What you're going to do, we're going to use a pin tool, which is a tool I've shown you before for painting the eyebrows. I'm going to take this and get a very tiny amount of super glue on the end of that. I'm going to drop it into the gap where this arm rotates around. Just like that. Use capillary action just to let it be pulled in. And I mean, it's ever such a small amount you need, because you just want to add a little bit of thickness to this area. And what you've got to do with this as well is keep this moving. So we're going to keep rotating that around. And we might put a little bit more in. You don't want this to actually glue, you want this just to sort of add a bit of thickness. So do this very carefully, just a little bit in, and then we'll rotate that round. Keep doing that a few times, and what you'll end up with is this. So this is one I've previously done, and you can see I can now rotate this round and it stays in place. Very simple thing to do, but just be careful. Don't just put super glue straight in. You've got to do it in small amounts and use a pin to very carefully put it in, because you don't want super glue on the surface. You just want this to go very gently into the joint. So like that. Like that. We'll keep doing it. So I need to do all the arms on these figures because all of them are like this. They're all a bit loose and floppy. And then I'll show you how to do the knees, which is even easier because we just use PTFE tape for that. So you can see I've now done all of these and they are pretty stiff again, so it means that we can actually pose these figures. While we're waiting for the glue to dry on the chest part, which will help the head stay in place, we can deal with this, which is a loose wobbly knee. So you can see that these are pretty loose, and it means that the figure actually won't stand up. But this is an incredibly easy thing to fix. So I'm just going to take this apart again so we can get to the little post inside. And all you need to do is get some PTFE tape. And PTFE tape is the tape that plumbers use to sort of seal pipes and stuff like that. So I've got some PTFE tape here, and I basically cut off a very small piece of it. So this is just about 1 centimetre's worth. What I'm going to do is fold that in half, and I'm going to fold that in half again. So we end up with a very tiny little square of it, just like that. You can see it just on the end of my finger there. What you've got to do is onto the post that is where the knee joint is, you just pop that piece of PTFE tape over the top of it like that. And then when you put this together, there'll be an extra little bit of friction on that, and this knee will stay in place. So if I just pop that over like so, and then get the other side of this leg, I can just temporarily put this together. You can see now this leg stays where you put it. It's just an extra little bit of friction in there. That's all you need to do. Very simple thing. So I'm going to do this to all of the other legs, and we can then start putting this figure together, which is just reversing the process of taking it apart. So I've got some screws, I've got some T-bars, and I've got some new O-rings. We can get these figures back up and standing, and then just start doing the final details on them. If you find you also have loose shoulder joints like this guy does, again just use the PTFE tape. All I've done here is wrapped a small amount around the shoulder joint. I've done it on both sides, and now when I put the figure together there'll be an extra little bit of friction on the shoulders, so his shoulders will work well. On this guy he didn't need it, the shoulders seem to be nice and stiff, but for some reason this one is a bit loose as well, so PTFE tape to the rescue. Right, these are starting to really come together now. All that work is paying off, and they are looking pretty much as good as new, but we're still missing one thing, and that's the little Cobra symbols that should be on their chests. And for that I'm going to be using these, which are replacement ones that you can buy from Toy Hacks. I use their stickers for all sorts of things. They do great Transformers ones as well, and you can actually buy the Cobra logos in various different colours. So I've got some silver ones here and some red ones here, and we know on Tomax Xamot they should be silver. These are self-adhesive and they are die cut as well, so I'm hoping I can just peel these off and stick them on. They should look good, so let's just give it a try. There's one of them. Place that on his chest just about there. Oh yeah, that's really good, very convincing. They're nice little stickers. A little bit awkward because his chest has got a slight curve to it, so it's just coming up at the bottom there. Maybe I can sort of heat that up with my thumb and sort of push it in place. Luckily I've got a few of these, so if they go wrong I can take them off and try again. But yeah, that's not looking too bad. Just heating it up with the thumb, pushing that on, seems to work. So I'll get the other sticker on, and then yeah, they're looking really good.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
And there you go, I think we can class these figures as done. They are looking as good as they are going to get compared to how they started. This is a sort of night and day transformation. When I first had them here, you saw they were pretty much missing every single bit of paint. Everything was worn and very tired looking. And now with a huge amount of work, I've managed to get them looking really nice again. All of the limbs are nice and stiff, so you can actually pose these characters as you would want to pose them. And they look like they would have done when you first took them off the cards back in the 80s. So I'm really pleased with how these have turned out. As you can see, I've now added some weapons to them, which just sort of finishes the look. And I've also made my own version of the skyhook. I couldn't find a version of the skyhook to buy, and actually when I did sort of look at images of it, I thought it was pretty rubbish, so I've made my own. I have a whole video on how I made that. This one actually works. It's got a little pulley in it, and it really does fly down a zip wire. So if you want to have a go at making your own skyhook, then check that link out as well. Now, as I say, this video has been recorded especially for Cobra Convergence 8, which is running through all of July. If you'd like to find out more about all the other people people taking part in it, then follow the link in the description. There are loads of things going on, so yeah, do take part and do watch all of the other content that people are producing. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it, then why not think about becoming a Patreon or YouTube channel member of toy-polloi. You get early access to all of my restoration videos and access to an exclusive series called On the Cutting Mat. So have a think about that, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.